Welcome back to the news. Today, something a little bit different because this is a response video to Blizzard Entertainment, because yes, the lads from the Diablo team sort of responded to a story that I suppose we essentially were the genesis of. It was a fairly interesting situation. Now, to give you a quick catch up on this, right, a survey went out to some players, and this survey contained just a whole bunch of information of, what would you prefer in various different editions of a new Diablo expansion. It's the kind of market research that companies like this do absolutely all the time, and a few of the things in the survey, to our minds, well, they were rather concerning. They absolutely represented the sort of thing that Diablo 4 players would not want, and as I said in the video, things that we think Diablo 4 developers would absolutely not want. Well, it turns out this story rather exploded, so we covered it, then it got what I call citation circles, where one of the big news websites covers your video, and then another place cites them covering it, and then it just spreads across everywhere. So now if you type in Diablo survey into Google News, we've got Metro UK, Game Rant, The Gamer, PC Games N, Kotaku, Dexerto, VG247, and many others. Interestingly though, they all far more went with the headline, considers £100 Diablo 4 expansion in leaked survey, allegedly surveyed about a $100 expansion. So rather than go with the angle of the stash space, it does seem that the various fan sites thought that the $100, £100 headline would be the bigger ticket thing to get those clicks. Of course, not to be outdone, the editing team behind Asmongold TV certainly did do what they do, which is release the Asmongold reaction video to our video entitled Blizzard is Milking Diablo 4. Now, some things, of course, to be aware of here. This is not about an action that Blizzard have taken. This is about the contents of a survey. Milking D4, are they? Will they? At least insofar as selling stash space, doesn't seem that that's a thing that's going to be happening right now, and we'll get to that. So the combo of that title, that thumbnail, and the eminently clickable face of one Mr. Sakrar, that did all, of course, lead to this getting 535,000 views, basically within like a day and a half, 2 days. I imagine it will go pretty damn far. Then, of course, the Diablo 4 developers actually had a live stream planned for the 30th of November. This is the live stream, and today it's time to talk about their response to us, as well as the other things that are going on with Diablo 4 in this video that is powered by our members at bellular.ghost.io. There, they've been getting early access to our content, and they've also been getting Loading Screen, which is the newsletter that we publish every single weekday, where basically you will know everything that's going on about the news. Also, we're all hanging out over on our over in the Members Lounge Discord server, which is all very fun, and it is the best way to support the work that we do here. So, you can join up there if you want to support the mission. With that said, let's talk about what happens. So, does Diablo 4 plan to add pay for power? Basically, no. No is the developer response. They recapped the implemented and currently planned changes they have for stash space in the game, and they said, no, we've been very clear about this, and it continues to be true. And this is 100% the case, because in our original video, we pointed out how their global public relations director stated no pay for power in the game. And we were essentially just trying to say, listen, we're not saying the developers want to do this, but it is in a market research survey, and therefore we should make our voices heard that this is not the sort of thing that we will really sort of tolerate, going on in the game. So ultimately what we have here is no plans for paid for power, no plans for stash space being paid for, and this is excellent because what we have is a full denial from the Diablo 4 development team. And that means that if any suit wants to, change this and perhaps go with some of the more dastardly seeming things from that survey, well, they're going to basically step on a very large landmine. Just that I suppose unlike a landmine, the whole point here is it's not secret. it will be very clear that this will be a betrayal, not only of their global PR director, not only of various things they've said, but also the very direct words of some of their more senior developers in this video. So overall, what this represents is basically a big old community win, and while they may be frustrated that our video, I suppose, led to this story, in a way, I do think this is good for the developers because it gives them a solid opportunity to directly say no to the rumor mill. Obviously, in the response, they were not able to say anything about where this story came from. They weren't able to talk about the market survey and perhaps put that survey into context, which is what we did in our video. They can basically just say that they have no plans. Now, could this sort of thing change? Yeah, look, it could. There are many instances of people saying no cash shop, no this, no that, and, you know, a few years passes and that sort of thing happens. But at the very least, this is a good win for us for now. Now, you might be thinking, is this just some fake drama? Why did you guys bring it up? What's going on? Well, basically, do I trust the actual developers themselves? Like, you know, as people? Yes, I do. Do I trust some arms of management at that company? The answer there is no, I do not. I do not trust these companies to not betray their developers. Another story going on is the insane Destiny 2 starter pack that is such a bad value that it's basically scamming new players, sort of entirely predicated on them not having game knowledge and not being able to place the contents of that starter pack within the correct context. Of course, that's been reverted, but that's just a really good example of every dev on that Bungie team probably thinks that this is a terrible idea and it never should have happened, but they were betrayed by their leadership. So I do not trust the leadership to not betray the developers. And you may say, well, some of the people in this video are leaders. I would say, yes, totally, but perhaps when it comes to the money, they won't be calling every single shot. And indeed, this sort of thing, you know, these market surveys can be relevant. A really good example here is the changes in the monetization of World of Warcraft Classic that came in with TBC Classic, which of course were they were kind of signposted by some surveys that leaked, and that does mean that it is relevant, it is right to talk about it, and it is a newsworthy story. But now that we are here with Diablo 4, I will recap some of the other things that have went on. So, what's basically happening is on December 12th, they've got a new event coming in called Midwinter Blight, where a storm has descended in the Fractured Peaks, a new threat has emerged, we meet this kind of cool-looking bard character, and we fight the Red Cloak Terror, who certainly does not look like a man popularized by the Coca-Cola Company. But there you go. Yes, the Red Cloak horror boss honestly does look pretty cool. The way this works is you kill mobs in and around that area in the Fractured Peaks, you'll get some trophies, you can take those back, and you can turn those into cosmetics. So, all seems fairly reasonable, and also there's a 10% XP elixir that works everywhere that can come from this event as well. Lots of XP, which, by the way, Season 2 has a hell of a lot more XP floating around than Season 1 did, and they've also done a bunch of like XP events on top of that. It's been kind of crazy. There's also the Abattoir of Zir. This is kind of interesting. This is them basically doing seasonal like end game content, right? This will unlock, I believe, on the 5th of December after you finish your seasonal journey. This is a new dungeon that basically is harder than a tier 100 nightmare dungeon. It's got 25 tiers of difficulty, but the jumps between each tier will be higher than in those nightmare dungeons, and it basically exists to let players use all of that power that they have amassed. And yeah, that's basically what's going on. It is something there for the end game. It is temporary, only in this season. They've said that one of the reasons why it's kind of done like that, it lets them vary things up, but also this is basically them testing what they'll be doing for seasonal endgame content, so I would assume they do not want to be held to the first version of some sort of thing that they've got to keep on going forever. Overall then, seems pretty decent. There is a special glyph that comes from it that gives you a multiplicative power bonus, and it also drops a hell of a lot of XP for your glyphs. Now, the new glyph will be really expensive to level up in terms of XP, which is why this event drops so much XP, but the sort of side part of that is that if you are able to do the Abattoir of Zir, you'll get loads of XP, so you can level up your other glyphs if you want to try those out. And there are no respawns, so yeah. definitely there to be a bit harder. As for some other things, they have massive loot updates coming to the game. This I did think was quite interesting, as evidenced by their change into these damage on Tuesdays shirt. It's the idea that you maybe will get an affix in your gear that says, on Tuesdays, you do plus 30% damage, which totally makes me wonder if anybody has seen the Fizzbin scene from Star Trek, the original series, where certainly the rules of the game Fizzbin are, yeah, pretty spicy. But okay, what are these changes? Well, they haven't announced them yet, but they do seem to be rather massive. Basically, there are many different affixes in the game. People obviously will want specific things, and to many, it's frustrating. You maybe have to go through 100 gloves or 200 gloves before you get the gloves that you want. So what they basically want is more ways to like customize, modify. I know there is like some re-rolling in the game, but they basically want to change that big time so that getting a cool item is more like a journey. That's how they put it. The idea, if you get a cool item and you're excited that you'll be able to modify it and tweak it to your own ends, which seems fairly good. They then talked about how Season 2 changed many of the stats in the game. And the reason why they did it like that is because if you change one stat, well, it'll have knock-on effects on every other stat. So if you're going to do changes, you kind of just have to do them all at once. And the same thing is happening with loot. This is targeted for Season 4, which will happen in 2024. And apparently they have a select group of Diablo content creators that they've been sort of consulting on with this one to get more feedback and to help them to iterate, which to me, overall, does sound pretty cool. And as an example, on the whole topic of a loot filter, they actually said that, like, they think a loot filter is important. It's not going to happen in Season 3 because any loot filter that they do now will basically not function with the gear overhaul. So it basically seems like they're going to overhaul gear, which is pretty cool. As for some other things, in Season 3, Hell Tides will be up for 55 minutes, down for 5, and then up for 55 again, so clearly people just don't like having to wait around on the timers. That seems pretty good. They also said that item level 925 gear sources don't feel great, being Duriel and world bosses, so they want, more sources of that. And that basically is what's going on with Diablo 4. Expansion 1 to Expansion 2 is 18 months. Will it be 18 months after that? I'm not exactly sure, but certainly I imagine they want a decently Call of Duty-like business model here where you just constantly have seasons with premium releases. And, I just think that's what they're going to be doing for the business model of this game. From what we understand, I don't know if they're the largest, but at one point they were. Basically, the D4 team is absolutely goddamn humongous. As an example, from the World of Warcraft team, they have got 2 expansion teams. So they're currently working on The War Within. They're also working in Midnight, and then they have a live team. And that's across about 600 developers. So yeah, these teams at Blizzard are absolutely ginormous, which certainly does explain the kind of goofy amount of content that WoW's been getting recently. So overall then, my thoughts are pretty simple. Diablo 4 has improved massively from Season 1 to Season 2. That's pretty much an undeniable thing. It's just going to be a case of, like, can they keep the improvement going? Will, I suppose, they have a healthy sort of state of affairs between them and Path of Exile, where there's just in general, there's so much ARPG content coming out these days. Like, this is, hell, even, there's cool things going on with Grim Dawn, as an example. So yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on in the space. It's getting very, very competitive, but frankly, Season 1 to Season 2, really good trajectory of improvement. It does seem like, now that they're basically targeting a full, loot overhaul for Season 4, it does seem like they're actually kind of getting there with their content cadence. It does seem they're actually listening to players. So yeah, overall, fairly reasonable. It's just, can you trust the suits not to cock the whole thing up and to throw their teams under the bus? That's basically the situation. To which I would basically say, don't do a Destiny. And my god, the difference between D4 and WoW and Destiny 2 is insane. And I know, price anchoring with Blizzard products, we are way more used to a very old school a la carte experience. You buy a game, that's it. Obviously, it ain't like that anymore. With D4, it is going to be you buy the game, you buy the expansions, and if you want cosmetics, you will buy either, cosmetics in the store, or you'll buy the season passes. But over in Destiny 2, they have so much more monetized, and all the different ways that they basically try to chance their arm to get some sort of new form of monetization. Basically, as far as I can tell, Bungie are essentially the gold standard in how to fumble the ball and how to not do a lot of these things. So don't do that. Keep on making good changes. Like, say what you want about Blizzard, the corporate entity. Say what you want about some of the money-making decisions, or even some of the design decisions that led us into the launch slate of Diablo 4. But in terms of actually responding to things, I do think they're basically doing a good job. At the end of the day, who I'm going to listen to in this are action RPG players, and just about everything I've heard from Season 2 has been positive. And certainly at BlizzCon, talking to a lot of the people in the fan sites, the overriding opinion was, if only it launched with Season 2, not with Season 1, we would be in an entirely different conversation, which to me basically says, if D4 had had maybe 6 months more playtesting, 3 months more playtesting, something like that, and they're able to see some of these road bumps ahead of time, it would have been a different situation. So I actually do think the D4 is actually a game that could have used quite badly a polish-based delay. That being said, could always be that they had some design hypothesis about how the open world Diablo would play that essentially just didn't play out in reality. And maybe the only way to fully sort of get that was to have real players playing the characters that they actually care about. Anyhow, that's it from this video. That's basically your update with D4, including the wacky situation of us being concerned about a survey and that suddenly turning into the internet. What a weird situation. Anyway, that's it for me. Of course, if you want to support the show, get early access to content, get Loading Screen, which is the newsletter that we publish, then check out badular.ghost.io. And of course, you can hang out with me and the team over in the Members Lounge Discord server, which is available to channel members on badular.ghost.io. So that's it for me. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.